Is Kristin Cavallari spreading misinformation about sunscreen? Is it irresponsible for her to say that you don't need sunscreen, especially as we're approaching the warmer months? Today, we're going to take a deep dive into Kristin Cavallari's sunscreen conversation, and now it's now being called the sunscreen controversy, which is particularly relevant as we're moving into spring and summer of 2024. And I'm going to give you some information about sunscreen and the sun and how sunlight exposure relates to our health, because people don't quite understand how important sunlight is for women's hormones, fertility, mental wellness, etc. And then we'll end with 4 practical tips for facing the sun this summer. Welcome to The Shift with Gina, a podcast where we talk about building healthy, whole women. It's been a minute since we've done a show about health-related stuff, so this is going to be a fun topic because I love talking all things sunshine and sunscreen. So let's first look at Kristin Cavallari's viral moment about sunscreen. On April 19th, independent journalist and influencer Yashar Ali shared a clip of Kristin's podcast. I don't know the name of her podcast, but she was interviewing somebody named Dr. Ryan Monahan. So let's take a look at this video. I'm just going to play a short clip of it and we will discuss.
I wanted to discuss the sun and sunscreen, which I know is controversial. I don't wear sunscreen, and anytime I do an interview, I get a lot of shit when I admit that I don't. So talk to me about the health benefits of the sun and why we maybe don't need sunscreen.
Totally.
Okay, I'm just going to pause really quick there also to try to avoid the copyright issue. This is a very similar take. I have a very similar take on sunscreen. People think I'm crazy when I say I never wear sunscreen. I actually don't know if I have sunscreen in my bathroom right now. I don't wear sunscreen when I go out. I don't worry about the sun on my skin, with one exception, which we'll talk about later when we get into the practical tips about sun exposure during the warmer months. But when she said this, I saw this clip before Yashar shared this, and it was not controversial to me. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of how I function as well. But you forget that we have been bombarded all of our lives about wearing sunscreen every single day. So this guy, Dr. Ryan Monahan, responds. We'll play just a little bit of what he says.
It's a very controversial topic, which is so funny because it's the sun. Like we've literally spent our whole existence as humans under the sun all day until the last 100 years or so. And now we're shut-ins, spend 93% of our lives indoors. That's really bad for a lot of reasons. The sun is life-giving and nourishing. However, we are living quite an inflammatory lifestyle. And that makes it really hard. Remember, I was talking about everybody has high levels of oxidative stress and inflammation. So when you're internally inflamed, the sun can kind of aggravate that, and you don't have the antioxidants.
So this is what Yashar tweeted when he shared the video. He said, and you can see it on the screen here, "This made me incandescent with rage. Kristin Cavallari has millions of followers across multiple platforms. She has a skincare line. She's obviously beautiful. These 3 factors lend her some credibility to certain people, and using that influence to spread dangerous misinformation is unacceptable." The YouTube video of this interview has many comments thanking her for the information, people stating that they're sharing her interview with others. Horrible. This man, Dr. Monahan, is not a medical doctor, much less a medical dermatologist. His bio says he received his master's and doctoral degrees in Eastern medicine at Emperor's College in Santa Monica. Ryan laments that people have spent most of their time in the sun for centuries until the past 100 years. Ryan, lots of things have changed thanks to science. People also used to have a life expectancy of 30 years old. First of all, we're going to get into this obsession with experts and the obsession with the MD at the end of people's names. We're going to talk about that later. But really quick, this claim that, people only used to live for 30 years and that was their life expectancy, that wasn't because they were dying of skin cancer from the sun. That was because we did not live in a time where there was running water, there was cleanliness, things like the plague would take out people. We were not dying because we were in the sun every single day for multiple hours a day. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on here. But let's read the rest of his tweet. He says, "Wearing sunscreen daily will also improve the quality and evenness of your skin." Right before that, he says, "The consensus is unequivocal. Wearing sunscreen with a high SPF on all exposed areas daily, regardless of the weather and how much time you spend outdoors, is the best way to protect your skin. This does not mean wearing sunscreen should give you a false sense of confidence. Protecting your skin from unnecessary exposure is still important." Yes, The so-called scientific consensus is that you should always wear sunscreen outside no matter what. Anytime your bare skin is exposed to the sun, it should be covered in sunscreen, slathered in sunscreen. That's what medical doctors tell us. That's what health organizations tell us. That's what we've been taught by all the mainstream machines for as long as we can remember. Because what happens when you go into the sunlight without sunscreen? You burn, you get skin cancer, and you die. That's what we have been told. For how long? How long have we been told that? Since we were little kids. And especially women, when you look at open up the women's health and beauty magazines, when you look at the beauty products, skincare, makeup, it always says without fail. And I remember reading this when I was in my teens and I was flipping through beauty magazines and women's fashion magazines. It always says that you must put on sunscreen every time before you leave the house, even if you're only going outside for 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going to give you a better perspective about sunscreen and the importance of the sun and how to absorb the sun in healthy ways. But first, I want to tell you about my women's group, The Shift. Enrollment is now open for The Shift, an online women's health group that I host on Mighty Networks. Every month, we have a different health challenge. And this month, we're doing a challenge called Boost Progesterone and Lower Stress, which is going to be really great for the warmer months because it's much easier to lower stress when you have the sunshine every day. So we're doing this great challenge where we're working on 7 healthy habits that are going to help you naturally boost progesterone, lower stress. And we've also always have weight loss programs in the group. We do weekly workouts, weekly recipes. It's a really great place to get information on hormones, fertility, menstrual cycle. I have a lot of webinars and interviews with multiple experts that are on there that we can't publish on YouTube because it would be considered medical misinformation. So it's a really great group at a super low price. It's only costs a couple of lattes a month. So click the link in the show notes to join us. Women only. Sorry guys, only women are allowed in the group. And in the month of June, we'll have a brand new challenge to work on as well. But if you are looking to lose weight or to cook more or to learn more about your hormones and your health, The Shift is the place to be. So we'll see you inside there. Okay, we have been told that sunscreen protects us from dangerous UV rays of the sun, and it even blocks vitamin D, right? So we know that sunscreen blocks vitamin D, but the American Academy of Dermatology says that's okay because they have a zero tolerance stance on sun exposure. In fact, their website says you need to protect your skin from the sun every day, even when it's cloudy. That's what the American Academy of Dermatology says. And then we're told to just take vitamin D pills as a supplement instead of getting direct sunlight. So vitamin D as a supplement, let's talk about that. The supplement industry has a market worth of over $30 billion in the US alone. Yet several popular supplements like vitamins A, C, E, selenium, beta carotene, and fish oil have failed in multiple studies. And amidst all these setbacks, vitamin D once stood out as a promising exception. We were told that the vitamin D supplementation works because you're not getting it from the sun. This supplementation will work. Vitamin D low levels of vitamin D correlate strongly with a higher incidence of numerous health issues like cancer, diabetes, obesity, osteoporosis, heart disease, stroke, depression, cognitive decline, the works. Even various autoimmune disease can be linked to low levels of vitamin D. Vitamin D is not only crucial for calcium absorption and bone health, but it also plays a significant role in many other bodily processes. It's an extremely important nutrient that also affects your hormones, your fertility, and a whopping 95% of Americans are deficient in vitamin C. So basically everybody, basically every American, with the exception of 5%, that's such a low percentage, everyone is deficient in vitamin C. Vitamin D. Vitamin D functions as a hormone that the skin synthesizes with sunlight exposure. So historically, when humans lived outdoors much more frequently, we were outside for 8 to 10 hours a day, and they wore minimal clothing in tropical climates. They naturally produced adequate amounts of vitamin D through sun exposure. However, modern lifestyles with limited outdoor activity and increased skin coverage, have led to widespread vitamin D deficiency, suggesting a huge disconnect between our ancestors' adaptations and current living conditions. So we're told to avoid the sun entirely and slather ourselves with sunscreen daily. However, at the same time, Vitamin D supplementation has failed hugely in clinical settings. 5 years ago, initial warnings emerged about its ineffectiveness in the form of a pill, and subsequent studies have only reinforced this conclusion. So there was a significant trial including 25,871 participants over the course of 5 years. They were administered high doses of vitamin D and revealed that no beneficial impact happened on cancer, heart disease, or stroke. So even being administered high doses of vitamin C, these people still didn't have any beneficial impact on these chronic diseases. This outcome has left many people questioning how such a disconnect could occur, especially when low vitamin D levels are linked with increased risks of numerous diseases. And there are even more researchers, like you can call them contrarian researchers, who are offering an intriguing explanation about why this actually makes sense. So they suggest that high vitamin D levels observed in healthier individuals might not actually be a direct cause of their better health outcomes. Instead, these levels may simply be indicators of something else, which is higher exposure to direct sunlight. According to this theory, it's not vitamin D itself that gives you the health benefits, but rather it's the sun exposure from the natural sun that naturally boosts the levels of vitamin D in the body. This perspective implies that the health benefits attributed to vitamin D might actually not be so much from vitamin D, but it might be from the effects of direct sunlight, which involves a broader spectrum of biological interactions than vitamin D supplementation alone can provide. Okay, so this revelation that many researchers have been finding in recent years points to a very serious misdirection in past health strategies, which focuses entirely on vitamin D supplementation. So that's a very long-winded way to say that taking a vitamin D pill is not going to give you the same benefits as direct sunlight. So there's this guy named Richard Weller. He's a dermatologist at the University of Edinburgh. He has become an influential voice on challenging the conventional narrative about sun exposure and health and vitamin D. Initially, he adhered strictly to the conventional medical community's warnings about the harmful effects of the sun. But his perspective began to change around 2010 during his research on nitric oxide, which is a molecule that dilates blood vessels and reduces blood pressure. Very important, right? Because high blood pressure is a serious issue with most Americans today. He discovered a new biological pathway where sunlight aids the skin in producing nitric oxide. Observations already suggested that cardiovascular issues and overall mortality rates increase with distance from the equator and during less sunny months. So Weller, this dermatologist, he connected the dots. And he hypothesizes that the sun might directly lower blood pressure. And his experiments confirmed this theory. He exposed volunteers to 30 minutes of summer sunlight, and this led to increased nitric oxide levels and reduced their blood pressure. And given, again, that high blood pressure is such a primary contributor to heart disease and stroke, major causes of premature death, not only in the US, but worldwide, this sunlight-induced reduction could have significant health implications on not only the United States, but the whole world. So in other words, direct exposure to sunlight can help lower blood pressure in adults. But hey, guys, keep slathering yourself in that sunscreen every time you go outside because the sun is your enemy. Okay, it's okay to be concerned about increased skin cancer risk from sun exposure. It's okay if that's a concern of yours, because sun exposure is linked to higher rates of melanoma. But this is what's really important to understand. Weller points out that skin cancer causes relatively few deaths. Fewer than 3 out of every 100,000 annually in the US die from melanoma. Okay, for every person who dies from skin cancer, from every person who dies of skin cancer, more than 100 people die from cardiovascular diseases. It is a very, very low risk. The odds are very low that you are going to contract skin cancer and die from it. Weller says that most skin cancers are the non-lethal types like basal cell and squamous cell carcinomas. I never knew if that word was squamous or squamous cell carcinomas. Due to their strong association with sun exposure, they often affect healthier individuals who spend considerable time outdoors. Melanoma is more dangerous. Okay, we know that. It constitutes, however, only 1 to 3% of new skin cancer cases, and it's much less common among outdoor workers compared to indoor ones. That's interesting. Willers suggests that intermittent sun exposure and sunburns, particularly in young people, are more critical risk factors for melanoma than chronic sun exposure. So, of course, Weller has gotten an immense amount of pushback from the conventional medical system. But there are many others like him who continue to find evidence that contradicts the established narrative. There's a Swedish researcher named Pelle Lindqvist. He had a long-term study of 30,000 women and showed that those who sunbathed regularly, bare skin in the direct sunlight, had not only fewer blood clots and lower diabetes rates, but they also had a significantly reduced risk of dying from melanoma. This is very, very interesting. His research further revealed that over 20 years, individuals who avoided the sun had double the mortality rate of those who actually embraced it. So this is the complete opposite of what we've been told. They tell us stay out of the sun. The more you're in the sun, the more risk you have for melanoma. All this research coming out is suggesting that avoiding sun exposure might be as detrimental to your health as smoking in terms of its impact on life expectancy. And the people who avoid the sun are actually more likely to contract melanoma and skin cancer when they do expose themselves to the sun in those short periods of time. All of these revelations, by the way, this Swedish researcher, his findings were published in the Journal of Internal Medicine in 2016. All these revelations continue to fuel debates about the health implications of sun exposure. And we're seeing how they challenge the prevailing medical advice about sunlight and skin health. Oh, and by the way, this is a really important one too. Weller's largest study published so far, it was published a few years ago. For 3 years, his team tracked the blood pressure of 340,000 people in 2,000 different areas around the US. They adjusted for variables like age and skin type. The results clearly showed that the reason people in sunnier climates have lower blood pressure is as simple as the sunlight hitting the skin. Sunlight lowers your blood pressure. There's been a lot of research showing this. So why have we never heard this information? Has this information ever been presented to you? Have you ever heard this? I'm getting a lot of this information from an article from Outside Magazine called "Is Sunscreen the New Margarine?" And I'm going to link that article in the show notes so you can go read through it. And it links all of the studies. You can take a look for yourself. But it's becoming clear that the benefits of sunlight extend far beyond vitamin D. Exposure to sunlight activates the release of several vital compounds in the body, including nitric oxide, serotonin, endorphins, enhancing both physical and mental health. It also plays a significant role in reducing the risk of several cancers like prostate, breast, colorectal, pancreatic cancers. And additionally, sunlight exposure aids in improving circadian rhythms. It reduces inflammation and helps moderate autoimmune responses. Sunlight helps balance your hormones, which is especially important for women who want regular pain-free menstrual cycles and good fertility. And these health benefits, which are free and naturally available, could be universally beneficial if people would just spend more time outside. Now, that little clip that we showed of Kristin Cavallari's podcast, that guy, Dr. Ryan Monahan, he starts talking about how if you have, high inflammation in the body is often a really big issue with Americans today. So he says if you have a lot of this oxidative stress and really high levels of inflammation, you go out into the sun for these short amounts of time, and the sun can actually exacerbate that inflammation and make it worse. So there are some hypotheses saying that it's not the sun that's making people sick. It's the fact that people are incredibly unhealthy internally. They have a lot of inflammation, a lot of toxins in their body, and the sunlight can exacerbate the effects of these toxins and this inflammation. And that's what makes you sick. So if you are a healthy person who has healthy levels or reduced levels of inflammation, you go out into the sun and you enjoy the sunlight, it can lower your blood pressure. It can help reduce autoimmune responses. It can help balance your hormones and your sleep cycle. So it's really not about the sun being so dangerous. That's what a lot of this research is showing. However, it's important to understand this. As I say all this, I'm not saying that if you're a fair-skinned person who burns easily, I'm not saying you should get outside and just sit in the sun for 10 hours straight. People process sunlight differently, depending on your exposure from a young age and on your skin tone. So I'm not saying that you should throw all caution to the wind. And if you're very pale, go sit in the sun without any protective covering. Nobody's saying that. Okay. It's important to understand that every single person has a different level of tolerance to the sun. Before we continue, I'm going to tell you a bit more about this, about how to know what your tolerance is to the sun, how to handle it. Before we continue, I want to tell you about my Fit and Lean program. How would you like to lose 10 pounds in 10 weeks? We have a group coaching program that spots are open for, once again. This is a great weight loss program for any woman who is trying to lose some excess body fat, learn how to cook more and eat better at home, have a workout program that actually works for her and is very realistic, both strength training and cardio, and learn some new lifestyle habits to reduce stress and improve sleep habits, etc. This Fit and Lean program is 10 weeks long. You get group coaching calls with me every week. I give you personalized macro guidance. I give you a recipe book. You get a workout plan, and we meet every week and always talk in the DMs about what you can do to change your habits and your lifestyle to finally help you lose that last bit of excess body fat. So click the link in the show notes if you want to join. And we're taking a small group. We only take up to 10 women at a time because it's such a hands-on program. So we hope to see you in there. It's a perfect time to start something like this as we're moving into summer. A lot of people want to look better and feel better for summer, and there's nothing wrong with that. So let's get started. Click the link in the description and join us. Okay, so this dermatologist, Weller, every year he works in a skin hospital in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, and it's located near the equator at an altitude of over 7,500 feet, and the city is subjected to intense UV radiation. Despite this, Weller notes that there's a significant absence of skin cancer cases there, which contrasts sharply with the sun avoidance advice given to Africans living in Britain and America. So you have a lot of dark-skinned people living in Western countries. They're told to always put sunscreen on no matter what. But then you have these countries in Africa where the sun exposure is way higher than what we would get somewhere like here. And they're out in the sun every day. Sunlight has always been as essential as air, water, and food for early humans as we lived under the tropical sun. We developed melanin, which is a natural sunscreen to protect against excessive solar radiation. And especially dark-skinned African ancestors, they produced ample melanin, which shields them effectively from the sun's harmful effects. But as humans migrated away from the equator, endured seasons with less sunlight, they eventually produced less melanin during darker months, maximizing sun absorption. This adaptation allowed for efficient vitamin D synthesis. However, modern lifestyles have changed our interaction with the sun dramatically. Nowadays, people spend most of their time indoors, just like that guy Ryan Monahan said. I think the last statistic I heard is that Western Americans spend 93% of their time indoors. This leads to increased sunburn incidence when they do expose themselves abruptly. And these are the conditions that make them ripe for melanoma development. So we have these very modern lifestyles where we just sit inside all day long. We're hardly outside. And then we become fearful of melanoma. Melanoma rates they vary significantly among ethnic groups. They're obviously the most common among white people, and they're the rarest among Black people. So again, your skin type matters. Okay, so again, I'm not saying if you are a fair-skinned person, do not go outside in the sun if you burn easily and just sit there for 3 straight hours. That's not the point here. Okay, melanoma typically appears in less sun-exposed areas like the palms, and it's not linked to UV exposure. Black people have higher incidences of diseases like diabetes and heart disease, which may actually improve with more sunlight exposure. Their naturally higher melanin levels mean they need more sun to produce and store vitamin D. But of course, the narrative driven by the cosmetic industry is that sunscreen usage must be promoted to all skin types, especially dark-skinned populations. The American Academy of Dermatology maintains that everyone, regardless of skin color, should use sunscreen all the time, no matter what, 100%. If you're going to go out in the sun, got to wear sunscreen. So if you are light-skinned, you would be wise to take some caution in the sun, especially if you're planning on spending multiple consecutive hours outside at a time. So let's now talk sunscreen, because there has been a lot of talk lately about why people are avoiding sunscreen. It's not only because they want more benefits from the sun. It's because sunscreen has been quite flawed. Early sunscreen formulations were significantly flawed. They primarily protected against UVB rays, responsible for sunburn, but they initially failed to block UVA rays, which were linked to skin cancer. Presently, SPF ratings still only measure protection from UVB rays, leaving many unaware of their exposure to, UVA radiation. But more important than that, the various ingredients commonly used in sunscreens have been identified as hormone disruptors, detectable in people's blood and even their breast milk. So if you are a breastfeeding mom, which I'm going to be again in just a couple weeks, hopefully sooner rather than later, because I'm like so close to the finish line, guys, and I can't be pregnant anymore. Why is it that the last couple of weeks of pregnancy feels like it just lasts forever? But anyway, moms who breastfeed, if you are slathering sunscreen on your body to go outside in the summer, those endocrine disruptors are going to get in your breast milk. And so let's talk about some of the ingredients. Oxybenzone, which is particularly notorious in basic sunscreen formulas. It's been found to alter coral DNA and contribute to the degradation of coral reefs. So, if it's going to affect coral reefs, imagine how it's going to affect your body. This has led to its ban in places like Hawaii, effective from 2021. And many other regions are expected to impose similar prohibitions because of its harmful effect on coral reefs. Oxybenzone has also been found to affect estrogen and testosterone levels in humans. Of course, if it's going to affect coral reefs, it's going to affect your hormones as well. Octinoxate, which is technically called, I'm going to butcher this name, octyl methoxycinnamate. This is another common ingredient that can mimic hormonal activity and has negative effects on the reproductive system and the thyroid. Homosalate is a compound that helps sunscreen penetrate the skin, and it can disrupt estrogen, androgen, and progesterone. We're doing our progesterone challenge this month in my women's group. Progesterone is known as the key mood and sleep stabilizer. It's extremely important for healthy menstrual cycles, for fertility, for maintaining pregnancy. Another one called octocrylene. It's a little bit less studied, but we do know that it can accumulate in the body and disrupt the endocrine system. Okay, so your standard sunscreen that you get at the drugstore has all of these. And yet doctors are telling you to dump these products on your skin every single day without caution. The sunscreen industry has been shifting towards more mineral-based formulations. However, the industry's history of endorsing products that later prove harmful certainly warrants skepticism. And we should rightly question whatever ingredients are in the sunscreen. So, we have to remember that multivitamins and vitamin D supplementations cannot ever replace the full benefits of natural sunlight. This is a really important topic. So now let's get into the 4 practical tips, because if we know that supplementation of vitamin D doesn't really work, and we know that the sun offers an array of health benefits, but we also don't want to burn our skin, and we also don't want to misunderstand our own tolerance to the sun, what are we supposed to do? So let's go over these 4 practical tips. Number 1, know your skin and know your own personal tolerance of the sun. For me, I have a high tolerance of the sun. I'm half Korean, half Italian, but even my Korean side are the kinds of Koreans that tan really well. We never burn. A lot of Koreans and East Asians have the paler sort of skin tone. My Korean family is like, you go out in the sun and we get the beautiful tan. And of course, my Italian side, that's the more olive skin tone. So I never wear sunscreen, except for one exception. If I'm on vacation and it's a beach day where we're planning to spend multiple hours in the sun, that's when I'll put on some protection, because if we're going to be out there all day, you pack the beach bag, you take the umbrella, the drinks and the towels and stuff, and you're going to be out there for 3-4 plus hours. That's the only time that I'll put on sunscreen. And I'll focus mostly on my face and my neck and my shoulders. I'm more on the Kristin Cavallari side, because she seems to also have an olive skin tone. So she probably tans well. She probably has a high tolerance of the sun, just like I do. So I don't really wear sunscreen. I mean, I haven't touched sunscreen, of course, since last summer, but now we're moving into the warmer months. The pool just opened up in our neighborhood. So I'm probably going to pull out the natural sunscreen that I have. I also never really wear sunglasses. This is another controversial topic. But I want my eyes to absorb what time of day it is, because that helps to regulate my sleep-wake cycle, helps me sleep better, helps regulate my circadian rhythm. Good for the pineal gland of your brain. Now, I'm not saying I look directly into the sun, but if I'm out, I don't really wear sunglasses. But in terms of sunscreen, you just have to know your own skin and your own tolerance. If you're fair skin and you burn easily and you know you're going to spend more than like an hour outside, use some toxin-free sunscreen. I'll link some below. I'll link in the show description which sunscreen I like to use. And when it comes to kids, like my 2-year-old daughter, for example, I've only used sunscreen on her when we're going to be at the pool or the beach for multiple hours. And it's a very mild, non-toxic sunscreen. I'll also link that below so you can take a look at it. But I don't slather her in sunscreen. I remember when she was a baby, a lot of people asked me, they're like, what kind of sunscreen do you use for her? I'm like, I want her to absorb the sun in short amounts. I'm not going to leave her outside in the stroller to sit there for an hour in the sun. But if I'm taking her on a walk, I want her to have some sunlight on her. It helps her sleep better. For the parents out there, how many of your kids sleep way better when they're outside for most of the day? I know for sure in the morning, like I try to get her outside in the morning so she can get direct sunlight because that's definitely going to help her nap better. It's going to help her sleep better in general. See, but if you tolerate the sun well, and if you have dark skin, don't be afraid of the sun. Don't be afraid of it. You can use a hat or protective clothing. We're going to talk more about that as well, but I just don't want you to fear the sun, which brings us to the number 2 practical tip. Number 2, get direct sunlight every day. Do it. Go outside. Your body needs that natural vitamin D and the many other benefits of direct sunlight. So make time every day, especially now that we're in the warmer months. It's May. It's May now, so it's warmer. The weather's nice. The sun's out. Go outside every day. If you're fair skinned, just limit it to 10 to 15 minutes of direct exposure, and then you can work your way up from there if you want. If you can tolerate more, tolerate more. Just because you expose yourself to the sunlight doesn't mean that you have to burn. I don't want you to go out there and burn, but get some direct sunlight on you. The best time of day to get direct sunlight is in the early morning and the late afternoon, shortly before sunset. When you get direct sunlight in the early morning, you're boosting serotonin, you're suppressing melatonin, which means that you're going to be more alert and more awake for the day. Boosting testosterone. Testosterone is even important in women. We need that hormone to build lean muscle and to regulate our other hormones as well. So try to get outside in the early morning. Eating breakfast outside at like 7 a.m. is such a nice way to just get some direct sunlight. You're not going to burn at 7 in the morning, even if you're pale. Even if you're white as a ghost, you're not going to burn at 7 in the morning. So be smart about it, but don't fear the sun. I've seen so many women in my health group and in my coaching programs benefit from direct sunlight on a daily basis. It helps them with balancing their hormones, helps them with weight loss, better mood, more energy, better sex drive, everything. I even had a client whose husband was really struggling with sleep. And she asked me, what can I do? We've tried everything. We've done the supplements at night. He takes magnesium. We tried it all. And I'm like, how much sunlight does he get? She was like, oh, I don't think he gets that much. I said, okay, well, let's start there. Get him an hour of direct sunlight throughout the day, accumulated. Take him outside 15 minutes in the morning, go outside 15 minutes in the afternoon, and then in the evening, get 30 minutes of sunshine before the sun goes down. And they started eating meals outside. They started eating dinner outside, trying to eat breakfast outside, and his sleep improved pretty drastically. Just from being outside. He was working a really taxing job and, there was high stress in his life, but having that direct sunlight really helped lower stress. It helped his hormones. It helped everything. And next thing I knew, she was messaging me telling me that her husband has never slept better because he was getting direct sunlight. So be smart about it. You don't have to go out in the sun at noon when it's the hottest of the day, but get outside in the morning, go out without sunglasses, without the sunscreen. Just spend 10 minutes in the direct sunlight and then maybe a little bit in the evening before the sun goes down. And you'll be very happy with the results. Trust me. Number 3, use non-toxic sunscreen and protective clothing whenever necessary. This one is particularly important for the fair-skinned people, but there's nothing wrong with using some non-toxic sunscreen if you feel like you might burn. Again, like I said, it'll be linked in the show notes. if you need some suggestions, stay away from the traditional drugstore sunscreens that are full of the endocrine disruptors that are going to make your hormones worse. And use protective clothing, like use a hat. If you're sitting outside, go sit under an umbrella or something, and so you can get the sun out of your direct face, your face out of the direct sunlight. But don't be afraid to use a little bit of protection if you're going to be outside for a little while. So for example, if it's the summertime and if it's like a Saturday afternoon and you're going to go to the park with your friends at 1:00 and you're going to be there for an hour or two, there's nothing wrong with putting on a little bit of non-toxic sunscreen on your face and neck, especially. But it's really important that you're choosing your sunscreen wisely. All those ingredients that I listed before, all of those endocrine disruptors, like oxybenzone, for example, octinoxate, all of these unpronounceable words, you should not have that in your sunscreen. And it's unfortunate because most sunscreens have these endocrine disruptors, and even a lot of the makeup that comes with SPF protection, it has these endocrine disruptors. So it's okay to want to protect yourself against high levels of direct sunlight, but just do it in a smart way where you're not slathering your skin, because your skin is the biggest organ in the body. It's incredibly strong when it comes to absorbing things. Don't slather yourself in these nasty endocrine disruptors. And number 4, stop taking health advice from people who are not healthy. When Yashar posted this tweet about Kristin Cavallari, he pointed out that the guy Kristin was interviewing wasn't a medical doctor. It was like, that was a distressing thing to him and many other people. And to that I say, so what? So what? He's not a medical doctor. We have to stop with this God complex of doctors and experts. How many times in the last just 5 years, let alone the last 5 decades, have we seen instances where medical doctors and people hailed as experts were proven wrong about everything from smoking cigarettes when you're pregnant? You had medical doctors that were suggesting which brand of cigarettes to smoke for pregnant women. And not to mention the whole debacle about saturated fats and butter causing heart disease, and instead opting in for margarine or seed oils. Experts can be paid off just like anybody else. You had doctors and experts who were supporting the American Heart Association decades ago, saying that meat and eggs and butter were causing heart disease. And you know why they were doing that? Because Procter & Gamble paid them off, along with paying off the American Heart Association, to lie and say that saturated fat from animal products was causing heart disease so that they could sell vegetable oil, margarine, and seed oils and make a huge profit margin off of them. And research showed decades later that it's actually the seed oils and the vegetable oil, the margarine, all of this man-made stuff that is actually causing more health issues than obviously something as natural as grass-fed butter. So we have to stop with the God complex of doctors. I am at a point where I don't care if you have an MD at the end of your name. You need to earn my respect. You need to earn my listening ears. In fact, at this point, a lot of people who go through the conventional medical system, it's not even their fault that they're programmed to believe outdated, archaic things that are paid off by big pharma. At this point, you have so many people who are online who are holistic practitioners, or they're just really well-read, great researchers who know more information about nutrition and health and hormones than any of these MDs probably ever will from medical school. This episode's definitely going to get shadow banned. I'm going to be a little bit surprised if it makes it through the medical misinformation flag at this point. But we have to stop pretending like MDs are infallible. They are not. Nobody is infallible. And I think one of the silver linings of the 2020 pandemic is that a lot of people are now forcing experts to earn their trust rather than just, blanketly trust someone because they have a couple of letters at the end of their name. So I don't even know who this Ryan Monahan guy is that Kristin Cavallari interviewed. I don't care that he's not an MD. I care more whether the information he's presenting is useful and it's rooted in research and it's true. That's what I care more about. So stop taking health advice from people who are not healthy. Okay. And here's the thing is that most nurses and medical doctors are not healthy. And I know this is a really controversial thing to say, but if you have someone who is 300 pounds coming in as your doctor or your nurse, like, I would listen to them just as much as I would listen to a homeless broke guy telling me about investments and how to make money. I'm sorry. And I know that we're now at a point where it's like, oh, but nurses work such long hours. They work 12-hour shifts. Okay. Yeah, I get that. They're getting paid to do, they're not like volunteering to do it. It doesn't mean we should feel like sorry for them and use that as an excuse for them to be obese. I can understand how working 12-hour shifts can obviously disrupt your sleep cycle. It might make it harder to lose like the last 10 pounds, but it's no excuse to be 50 to 70 pounds overweight. No, stop taking health advice from people who are not healthy. And if you see people online who are upset because Kristin Cavallari said something so horrible about sunscreen, you shouldn't listen to her. And the person saying that is like extremely overweight and unhealthy. It's like, well, I'm not going to listen to you when it comes to health. I'm just not. I don't say that in a mean way. I just say it's just practical. It's the same thing with any other topic on the planet. Like, I'm not going to take marriage advice from somebody who just got divorced for the third or fourth time. I'm not going to be taking money and financial advice from somebody who has no money and who blew all of his money on poor investments. I'm not going to be taking, what other example can I use? I'm not going to be taking motherhood advice from a woman who is 50 and has never been a mom or has never been married. I'm not. And we shouldn't be accepting health and nutrition advice from people who are unhealthy. So that's all I have to say on that. I don't mean to offend anybody. I really don't. I'm not saying that you are less than or less worthy because of your health struggles. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying you can't be doling out health advice if you are struggling yourself. Like, I'm not going to be taking sobriety advice from a drug addict. Like, would you go to AA and listen to somebody who is currently struggling with alcohol addiction and who's like was drunk the night before? No, of course you wouldn't listen to them. You would encourage them to get help. You would want to help them. And I want to help people who are struggling with their health, but I don't want to listen to their health advice. So get some sunscreen that is non-toxic for the summer. Use it whenever you feel like you need it, but don't be afraid of the sun. It's okay. It's good, actually, to get a little bit of sunlight, direct sunlight. Get it on your skin, balance your hormones, improve your mood, sleep better, all of that, all of the good stuff. That's all I got for today. This is a long episode, but to answer really a 45-minute way to answer the question, is Kristin Cavallari spreading misinformation about sunscreen? I don't think she is. And again, I know this is like really controversial for a lot of people to hear. If you look at Kristin Cavallari, how old is she, by the way? Let's see, Kristin Cavallari age. She's in her 40s. Okay, so she's 37. She looks great. She looks healthy. Her skin looks great. Like, that's somebody that I would take advice from when it comes to skincare. Her skin looks good. She's one of those celebrities that has not ruined her face with terrible plastic surgery either. Like, I think she looks really cute. I don't even know much about what she's doing these days. The only thing I've heard is that she's like dating a much younger guy. I think her boyfriend's like 24 years old and she's 37, whatever. But I mean, when it comes to her skincare, like, she looks great. She looks healthy. Skin is radiant. So it seems to be working for her. But again, you know, she has an olive skin tone. So if you're super pale, you don't necessarily have to sit in the sunlight forever. But I would probably rather take skincare health advice from her than an MD who just went to a good school but is like overweight and has terrible skin. It's just me. I'm gonna log off now and eat something and pray that this baby comes out soon, because I'm ready. I'm ready for the baby to arrive. You know how the end just feels like forever. All the moms out there, if you're pregnant and if you're towards the end, hang in there. It's never gonna come. The finish line will never come. No, it's gonna come. It's gonna happen. We'll get there. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share the episode. And if you didn't like it, you can tell me how much you hated it in the comment section. There's always somebody who tells me how much they hate the episode, and that's fine. Thank you for watching. It's just so funny to me. They watched the whole thing and they're like, I hated this. I'm like, thank you for watching anyway. It must have not been that bad because you watched the whole thing and then you told me how much you hated it. But if you have had pleasant experiences with direct sunlight, how it's affected your health in positive ways, please feel free to share those stories as well. Okay, that's all I got. Oh, I'm tired. Bye, everybody. Have a great day. Enjoy the sun.